During the State of the Nation address last Thursday, President Jacob Zuma announced that government is committed to the overall Independent Power Products Programme and is intent on expanding the programme to other sources of energy, including coal and gas, in addition to renewable energy. This is a boon for the renewable energy industry, which for a long time wondered what its future was in South Africa. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and let's discuss whether or not there's enough space in the sun for independent power producers, especially if, as Eskom refuses to sign any new power purchase agreements, they're within acceptable affordability ranges. Joining me for this discussion, Marubini Raphulu, who is Chief Investment Officer at Hulisani New Energy, and also Franita Neuville, who is AIM Market Development Lead at Sub-Saharan Africa for Thomson Reuters, to talk about the State of the Nation address, of course, and whether or not government's pockets are deep enough to achieve its promises. Give me a sense of it. I mean, President Jacob Zuma, when he eventually did begin the State of the Nation address, after our traditional argy-bargy and throwing people out onto the street and speaking only to ANC members and one or two others in Parliament, he was very upbeat, I thought, on independent power producers and the energy mix.
I think the biggest challenge for the government is going to be where they're going to find the funding for this alternative power. They've got a lot of other things they need to fund, such as the NHI that's come up.
We need energy. That's a non-negotiable. At the moment, I think we're producing 34,000 megawatts of power a day.
34,000 megawatts.
We're using 28,000.
So we have a reserve capacity for about 6,000, yes.
But we're using less electricity in South Africa today, correct me if I'm wrong, than we were in 2008, just before the lights went out, which means we haven't increased demand at all, which is symptomatic of the economy.
We've actually reduced demand. That's where the economy is. A lot of big industrial users have actually cut down. So that's where the economy is. Yeah.
Are you suggesting then that it's not a priority for government to spend? Because there are other more urgent needs. We've got excess capacity right now. Perhaps government should put the brakes on new energy procurement.
Not necessarily. I think that they've got a big challenge ahead of them by keeping the poor happy, because they also need to look ahead at the elections coming up in 2019 and how they're going to win or keep the votes that they seem to be using.
So politically it may make more sense to fund money into NHI and into other glory projects rather than, but then we get ourselves stuck in a 2008 scenario where we don't invest in the good times when there is excess capacity and we run out when the economy just starts showing some life.
Yeah, I think the thing with infrastructure spend and energy spend is it's very long term. You need to plan for it before you need it. We may have excess capacity now, but in 5 years' time, in 3 years' time, we may not have. So you always need to be planning on a long-term basis, which is why the IRP is up to 2050. You need to plan long-term.
There was a point where it looked like Eskom had pulled the rug out from underneath you. It said, hold on a second, you guys are producing energy as independent power producers of various sorts at far too high a cost relative to what even coal can do.
Yeah. I think that argument is, if you look at round one, round two of the renewable energy independent power producer program, the prices were high.
But it was what, R2.58 per kilowatt hour or thereabouts?
Yeah, it was in the R2, and then you had round two where it dropped below R2, and then you have round three where it dropped below R1 per kilowatt hour, on average. So what you have is you have prices that are constantly going down, and in round four, we saw prices below 80 cents mainly. And there's the expedited round where, prices should be below 60, below 70 cents. That's where it should be.
Matsela Koko sat in that very chair and has said, he'll talk to you guys in the 60 cents range. Yeah. And that looks like where the negotiations are going to happen. Now, at that sort of price, are we going to go down the nuclear route? Because here's R1 trillion we don't have that we need to procure conservatively. We need to procure nuclear. Can we go down the nuclear route?
I think it is a possibility. It is the cheaper option if you cut out the actually building phase. Yes, so definitely it's something that...
Yeah, we can't cut out the building phase. It's an upfront cost of nuclear. What are the numbers on nuclear in terms of what it costs to be competitive relative to declining costs in terms of IPPs?
I think nuclear is very difficult to price. You need vendors to come in and give you a price, which is the difficulty with the build. You don't know how much it's going to cost.
But on average, if you're building an average-sized nuclear power station delivering, I don't know, 30,000 megawatts of power a day,
that would be a huge one.
Would it be big? Okay.
Yeah.
But if you built a standard nuclear power station, you built it on time and in budget.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, when does it pay back?
If you build it on time, on budget, fixed term contract, you knew exactly what you were doing, you could bring in nuclear for under R1 a kilowatt hour.
But still, that's not competitive with IPPs.
That's not competitive with IPPs. In the long term, though, if you looked at it, the IPPs can operate for, I mean, solar, you could operate it for maybe 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
The power purchase agreements that we have currently are 20 years, so you can operate it beyond that. So there's an opportunity that at the end of the 20 years you could, cut the tariff and go on. Wind as well. Nuclear, you would finance it probably over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the life could be 60 years, it could be 80 years. So you could argue that at the end of the 30 or the 40 years, you would have the...
But as government or as the national provider of energy, I take absolutely no liability because I sign a contract with you and make it your problem. It is your job to provide it for me. If you fail to do so, I sign with the next IPP. What's the big deal?
The big deal would be from a cost perspective. In order for the IPPs to build, they need a guarantee. Same with nuclear, you'll need a guarantee. And that guarantee is for payment of whatever the contracted price is for the 30 years, for the 40 years. With prices coming down at the rate that they are, can you really commit to what's going to happen in the next 10 years or the next 20 years? That is something for the legislators to argue.
How good is government's guarantee right now? We're sitting in a financially stretched, I think I'm being generous and being kind, pre-budget. We'll find out exactly the true state of the nation next Wednesday. But we're sitting in a financially stretched economy where the finance minister is pledging to cut expenditure by 20 billion rand, raise taxes by 28 billion rand to try and make up for the shortfall that he's seen in revenue collection over the last year. And there's huge pressure, as you pointed out, from NHI and so many other social services, including, for example, the social grants, for example. We can't afford a big expenditure on energy, and we can't afford not to. Are we stuck between a rock and a hard place?
Yes, Bruce, but also I think that it's important for government's guarantee to still be seen as just that and good, because otherwise people aren't going to lend us money anymore. It's as simple as that. We saw Mozambique defaulting earlier in the year on their debt, and we can't afford it because otherwise the rand is going to take a hammering again, and South Africa is going to further lose its footing as one of the more trustworthy economies in SSA.
When Trevor Manuel became finance minister, I think we were paying 20 cents in every rand to fund our apartheid era debt. Managed to get that down to about 8 cents. Now it costs us about 11 cents out of every rand collected to fund our debt. That number's likely to go up this budget, maybe 12, 13 cents as our debt burden grows. That's the thing we've got to deal with, surely.
Yes, it is, and that's why it's important for the government to prioritise their funds that they are getting correctly and efficiently. And that's why heading into the budget that we'll see next week, we are expecting taxes to go up.
Yeah.
So whether it be VAT to be increased maybe by a percentage point, or personal income tax, or even a wealth tax, as some people
Well, what he's hoping for is that some of that will go into independent power producers. What are you hoping for? Because the president is famously non-committal in his State of the Nation address. He speaks in broad generalizations. This is the wish of government. Government wishes to expand IPPs. Realistically, what are you expecting?
What we're expecting is he's given a direction to say, look, Eskom will sign the PPAs. Then it's for Department of
PPAs are
power purchase agreements.
Right.
They will sign the power purchase agreements that they so far refused or been hesitant to sign. What we're hoping for is that the DOE, the Department of Energy, the Department of Public Works, the political head for Eskom. They'll sit in a room and they'll work out a mechanism and sort out how exactly that's going to happen. They'll work out the process and the bids that have not been awarded yet, how that's going to happen and how we're going to plan going ahead so that we don't go into this again.
What do you need as an independent power producer in terms of the certainty you require to keep investing, to keep employing, to keep bringing power to the grid?
We need policy certainty, and we need the political will to make it happen.
Does it exist?
Political will or certainty?
No, we know certainty doesn't exist. Is there political will to create the certainty?
I think from our interactions with the Department of Energy and even people at government level, there is the willingness to allow independent producers to come into the energy mix. It makes sense. We bring outside funding. You bring in an energy mix. We work together with Eskom. There's a place in the sun for everyone.
Sure. What does the energy mix look like 10 years from now? Is there a greater element of nuclear? Because of course we have Koeberg. So do we have a greater element of nuclear, or have we, with 10 years from now, struggled along with Medupi and Kusile? They're finally finished and producing at full capacity, and we're supplementing that then with IPPs, with solar, with hydro, and perhaps with diesel.
I think in terms of the draft RFP, we only expect nuclear in 2037. Provided it's not brought forward, there shouldn't be nuclear until at least 2035, 37. So the energy mix 20 years from now, you'll see lots more solar, lots more wind. We may build more coal. There was a coal program which was awarded, and gas. So you'll see a lot less coal firepower as power stations as the Eskom power stations reach the end of their life.
Is anybody doing anything serious in the Karoo in terms of fracking? Because that's gone off the boil so dramatically since oil went from over 100 to below 50.
Again, it's policy certainty. There's a lot of activity on the ground, but there are no exploration licenses. There are no EIAs. There needs to be policy certainty and regulatory certainty before you can spend money on drilling. How
complicated is it to get that regulatory certainty? Why is government dragging its feet, or just incapable of putting it together?
No idea. What
did your gut tell you? I know you've been diplomatic.
My gut is our environmental legislations are some of the most stringent in the world, and they need to come up with the policy framework. Personally, fracking, if done correctly, can be done. You need to put the rules around it to say this is what you must do. You mustn't contaminate water, and you need to enforce the rules. That is what you need. If the policy certainty is there and the regulatory certainty is there, and you enforce, you can do it.
There we go. This great South African conundrum. Franita Neuville, who's the AIM Market Development Lead at Sub-Saharan Africa for Thomson Reuters, and Marubini Raphulu, who's the Chief Investment Officer at Hulisani New Energy. It's quite depressing, isn't it? We've got all of this potential. We've got all of this harnessed energy, literally, that we're trying to unleash. And yet we sit with a Department of Energy that is more concerned about whether or not its Russian friends will be building nuclear power stations. We were sitting on coal energy, also massively over budget and over time. And there's a private sector just aching to make a contribution. Other issues to tackle as we talk about South Africa of the future next time on the MoneyMakers. Thank you for watching. Good night.